Wonderful. I'm gonna start in just like the order that the names came in here, so it's like a no, really, it's not important who starts or who wants to do it. I'm gonna start with Natalie Moncada. Natalie's working for Conair, and you graduated in 2020. Is that right? Yep. Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe I think I don't know if I saw you here because I was here. I started in 2019. So yeah, like maybe like there was like something at some point. So now it's really good to have you here. We're also going to have Annie. Annie, can you please help me pronounce your last name? Nirschel? Oh well, I was a little close.
You were close.
Annie graduated in 2017. Is that right? And she's working for a great group, right?
Yep.
Natalie's working for Conair. And we have Juliana Velez, who graduated in 2019. That was a year that I started here. She's working for Gap, one of my favorite stores ever. So thank you so much for you guys being here. If you can start by introducing yourself and just tell us a little bit about what you're doing here. And if that's okay, we can follow that. We do Natalie, Annie, and Juliana. And then for the other questions, we can switch the order. Sounds good? So Natalie, let's start with you.
Well, you guys already know my name, but I basically work as a digital designer at Conair. So most of my work just involves a lot of like building banners, creating content for Amazon, Target, Walmart. Sometimes I take on many roles where I work. So like sometimes I'll make a storyboard for like a shoot for products, or I'll be creating like content for the .com pages for all the brands that Conair owns. So I'll be more happy to share more, but I'll take it on to the next person.
Annie?
Hi, my name is Annie. I work for Great Group. I've been in digital advertising for 7 years. Basically, when I graduated from the DMD program, I was like, what do? So just sent my resume out into the void a million times over. I got really lucky. I ended up at a creative social agency, like very early in the days of social marketing. Got to make memes for Pop-Tart. That was really great. Now I'm making social content for Applebee's. So if you see an Applebee's TikTok before you comment something mean, just know that me and a bunch of other people worked very hard on it. Also, quickly, just want to shout out my sister, who is not a DMD major, but is on this call. Hello, Jessica. Oh, and thrilled to be here.
Juliana?
Hi guys. So yes, I'm Juliana and I'm currently at Gap. I've been at Gap for 3 years now. And I kind of work on different projects, but mainly on social. So that's organic or paid. Anything you see on the feed is myself and 2 other team members. Anything like paid assets. So if you're on Pinterest and you see like a little Gap ad, or you're on Instagram and the ad pops up. But then I have hands on kind of like curating the retail. So when you walk into the store, the overheads, I've touched the windows, the billboards in Times Square. So a little bit of everything. But yeah, super excited to be here.
Juliana, and why don't we start with you? It's been more than 5 years since you graduated. So why don't you tell us about the steps from when you graduated, then the next day you're like, oh, I'm unemployed. What do I do next? Please walk us through until you are where you currently are, please.
Yeah, well, throughout my college experience, I worked at Apple. So I was working at the Apple store in Greenwich Ave. And my idea was like, I'm going to climb up this Apple corporate ladder and this is where I'm going to be. But I couldn't find like my passion point. I couldn't find like what I really wanted to do. So when I graduated, I started to just do a lot of free work. Anybody who needed a website, anybody who needed some logos, anybody who just wanted to do anything creative. And I think the best part of this field is that we're essential. Everybody needs some creativity. So I just started to do free work for friends and people that I knew. And I built up a portfolio. And then I started my first like big girl job at a creative agency, also doing memes. and I was doing motion graphics. And I did that for a year, and then I decided, let me kind of like branch off, and I was somebody's executive like assistant, and I was just helping her create content and like market herself. And then the pandemic hit and everybody's world got turned upside down, and I was unemployed. So I decided to take the time to invest in my passion, which was fitness, and it still is fitness. And I decided to merge fitness and creativity, and I launched like my own workout brand, and I started to make content and really grew up that brand until I was like, all right, now I need a job. But I had done so much that I was able to start to apply to jobs. And honestly, it was like months of applying and hoping somebody would get back to me. And Gap, it was between Gap and Bleacher Report. And Gap ended up giving me an offer first, and I was able to start with them.
Wonderful. It sounds easy, right? When you sum it up in a minute, but I'm sure it's
It was a lot of tears, a lot of like, I don't know what's gonna happen. But it took a lot of consistency.
wonderful. Annie, what about you?
Juliana made the key point, which is just consistency. I think when I graduated from the UConn DMD program, I was like, I am fabulous. I'm gonna do all the things now. And then I started to apply, and I was like, that's so weird that like these people don't know how fabulous I am. I'm fabulous. My mom thinks I'm fabulous. And it really was like very humbling after 6 months of applying to be like, I don't even know what job I'm applying for. So I like barricaded myself in my room. I like got a little pancake tush in the process of just I sat down for 3 weeks and just animated a bunch of things and designed a bunch of things. And that's what's great about the DMD program is they're like, you want to do all the things, you want to be a jack of trades. So I just pulled together all my work, created a bunch of new work, and then sent that reel out. It's like a 30-second reel that I sent out literally to everywhere. I think I applied to like 4,000 jobs, not to discourage you, because a lot of them were easy apply. A lot of them were like, do you speak Mandarin? And I'm like, no, but maybe they'll let me work here. So Juliana hit it right on the head. Persistency, just keep going. You will get something. This market, though, is rough. This job market is rough, but you can do it as long as you don't give up. That's my motivational speech for today.
Thank you, Annie. And Natalie, what about you? Like, once you graduated, what were the steps that you followed to be where you are right now?
I could tell you right now that I graduated at the cusp of COVID, so it was very, very difficult. And when I tell you, like, same thing as what Juliana and Annie said, a lot of the work, hard, heavy work is what you have at your portfolio. And someone gave me really good advice when I was thinking about where I wanted to work. And that person told me, like, wherever your interest is or your passion is, have that reflect what your portfolio is. So if it's like fashion related or like beauty and lifestyle, only have those kinds of projects. Even if it's like a mock project and it's not like you didn't actually work there, doing those kinds of things can really help you go in the direction you want to. Because I trust me, like my first job was like not as competitive. I was working at a company where it was like basically like silverware, like kitchenware items, and I still work with like those kinds of brands, but it wasn't something I was very passionate about talking about in interviews, and like the interviewers could tell. And I find it's a lot easier to talk about things that you're passionate about rather than just like, faking like, oh yeah, I was super excited about like, working with this like kids toy, you know what I'm saying? So I think it's really important that if you really want to get into that like certain lane that it reflects in your portfolio. And the other thing is like I there was many times where I had interviews and I wasn't like accepted, and that's totally okay. Like rejection is really hard, but at the same time, what's really important is when somebody like criticizes like your work. Like you can't be better if someone doesn't criticize your work, and that's how I view it. But that's the best way that you can improve. And like, you're always going to be learning. You're never going to be like I know everything, and The great thing about UConn is like, you know, you're gonna be prepared. Like, trust me, like everything you learn in classes, like was super helpful for me in like my current job. So yeah, that's all I had to say too. But also, um, I worked at like, you know, I worked contract jobs. My first job was at Henkel, and part of how I got my foot in the door was really just like I was 4 months without a job, and it really just took me thinking about who I knew. And it's really important that you have like a good relationship with your professor. And like, you know, if you have a professor that like is in the industry, like, you know, make work that is reflective of what they do. And, you know, it shows. So I knew like this one professor, his name was Bill Thomas, and he worked at Hinkle, and he kind of got me like the foot in the door in that angle, and that's kind of like how I got to Conair. And the other thing I want to say about that is that basically, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. I was up at 5 a.m. I'm at a shoot right now, so bear with me. But I think I like what's really funny about my story is that I actually like my concentration was business strategies. So I never really like planned to, it was more like on the analytics side. I did a lot of that stuff at UConn. And so now I'm a digital designer, and that's completely different, but it's still great. Like, you know, I wasn't picky, and you know, sometimes you just gotta work hard to show what you know, and you'll land somewhere that you actually like. So yeah.
And I think that's a really good transition for what I'm about to ask next. And Juliana, and maybe we can just like keep going with you. The truth is that we are looking at the three of you right now. You seem very happy, very accomplished, but the reality is that it's a never-ending process, right? You're also learning. There are still challenges. So why don't we talk a little bit about those challenges, the challenges that you faced when you recently graduated, and also some of the challenges that you're dealing with right now, because that's one of the things that are always going to be there. So dealing with that uncertainty, at least even in my career, I think that it helps you realize that we all share the same, you know, there's going to be uncertainty, there's going to be constant challenges. So tell us in your experience, like what are some of the challenges that you started and some of the challenges that still remain?
Yeah. I think one of them we kind of talked about, and it's like not getting discouraged. So it's remaining and being consistent. And that's just gonna always be right. The reality is that this is a work environment, or you know, and like jobs come and go. Companies may have layoffs, you know, so it's like never getting overly attached to a job. And one of the things, like at the end of the day, we're all humans. So one of the challenges is like your values change, or your interests change, or you've done something for a while and it doesn't motivate you anymore. And like being okay with that. When I started my first job, I started to realize that like I felt like my creativity was being put in a box, and I didn't like that. And it started to take a toll on, you know, my work. I felt like I was just like a robot, waking up, doing a job, going to sleep, waking up. And that wasn't how I operate as a creative. I think a lot of you guys can relate that it's like, you know, we need some excitement, and it's being able to know when to take the step, you know, to take a leap of faith and be like, all right, I'm going to switch my career, which is a scary thought. But again, it's like being able to separate a job title from like being a human being, and never getting attached to that job title. You know, some of the challenges can be just like your current home environment, or just anything outside of a job can be a challenge, right? I mean, we all entered the workforce during COVID, or some sort of overlap of COVID, and that probably impacted not just the job, but how we were like in ourselves with our own, you know, lives. Some of the challenges that I face now, I guess, you know, life has evolved. So now I'm married, I have a daughter, and it's like balancing being able to have time with my family and work. And something, if I can honestly share, it's like, don't chase the money, because it's natural. Like everyone's going to be like, you know, oh, I want to go to the job that pays the most, but it's like, there are things outside of a work environment that are important. And a challenge in this current phase of my life is how can I balance my work and, you know, operate in excellence, but also have enough time for my daughter, enough time for my husband, enough time for myself, and keeping my mental health and my own life as like top priority. But I think being able to start off that way of like, hey, I'm going to always prioritize my passion. And I think something that Natalie said that was so important is like, do something that you're passionate about. And that's going to alleviate a lot of the challenges, because it's very hard to show up when you don't care about something. And when something doesn't motivate you and you can't stand behind your work, like let everything you produce like be something that you're proud of. So, I mean, that's a challenge because it's not easy to do that. But taking time to just have honest conversations with yourself.
Really, yeah, that's super important. I think that also, you know, you mentioned something that I've always thought is it's very appropriate. Nobody preps you for the life part, right? We're talking about all the professional stuff, like, hey, you can do this, you build your portfolio. What about your mental health? What about like learning about taxes, financial situation?
Yeah.
That are so important in life, and sometimes we don't feel completely prepared for that.
Yeah.
We're just like juggling and trying to figure everything out at the same time. So I'm really happy that you're mentioning that portion, and congratulations on the growing family, by the way.
Thank you.
Annie, let's go with you.
Oh my gosh, Juliana, those were such amazing points. It is so important to remember that in this field specifically, you are a person. I have worked on so many different brands in the same job. I'm a content creator, and I have produced content at a couple of different agencies. I worked at Mars doing it for like Snickers and all different candies. I cannot remember specifically, but like Mars candy. I worked for Wheat Thins doing their social media. I worked for Xbox Game Pass doing their social media. I do Applebee's social media now, as I said. So the point Juliana makes of remembering you're human, it is shocking how some people can be like, this is rocket science, this is brain surgery. We are not doing anything that is life-saving. We're creating content for Instagram, for TikTok, and Twitter. And honestly, one of the main challenges about being in advertising for a brand is a lot of people don't care about what Applebee's has to say on Twitter, which is like shocking. But you're going to work with people who are going to push you in directions where you're like, are you really going to make me cry over boneless chicken wings? Are you serious? And Juliana's right. Like, if something is not serving you, you have to leave. And one additionally toxic part of this job, I've been in this job for 7 years. I'm 30. I'm also married, also like got my like life-ish together-ish. And after some self-reflection, I'm like, do I really want to be making memes for the rest of my life? A challenging thing about when I came into this industry 7 years ago is there was no TikTok. And it's like, it was like Facebook was the main social media platform. And I've watched this industry evolve, but unfortunately, the position of content creator is still, it varies from agency to agency. And I have not experienced tremendous career growth. And because of that, I'm like, Juliana's right. And so recently I started a master's program in social work because I was like, I have done so much to try to like appease clients and deal with like really toxic project managers and account managers. I feel like I am like basically a therapist now. And it can be anything. You can start over at any time. If this is not serving you, if you start your career like I did, and I was like, I want to sit in a dark room on the couch and make memes, and then you outgrow that, that's fine. But just continuously checking in with yourself, be like, is this really something I want to do? And just ask yourself that constantly, because guess what? This is not surgery. No one will die. You will be fine. And you are capable, strong people getting a UConn education. You will be fine if you make a change. Or if you stay where you are, that's also good. But Juliana, cannot like re-emphasize what you're saying enough. Check in with yourself constantly. If something feels yucky, evaluate it. And you're a person and you're working for people, and no one is going to die if an Instagram post goes up late.
That's a good quote, Annie. That's great. Natalie, what about you? Challenges that started and challenges that remain.
Um, a lot of my challenges, I mean, the same as what Juliana and Annie discussed, like a lot of the stuff that goes on at work is never that serious. Like if someone is saying something, you just go home. Like your home is your home, your work is your work, which is very important to get that down. But I'm not going to drill you guys about this. If anything, I'm going to tell you that the challenges I've really faced is like, I guess, different viewpoints. Sometimes like your client's going to ask you one thing and then you really feel like this angle is going to be the best angle. And sometimes you have to work with the client and give them what they want. And that for me sometimes is challenging because you know, you have different viewpoints and sometimes you want to state like, okay, if you put this up, this is going to get more reach. And then, you know, the client's like, no, I want to sell at this angle. So I guess learning to kind of like uh accept defeat when you get it. It's just like, you know, that thing. I mean, that's the most challenging for me. If anything, I feel like I've dealt with things like outside of work, but nothing too serious for me ever. And of course, mental health is very important. So yeah, I don't really have much of any challenges, but yeah, that's that's it from me.
Thank you, Natalie. I have a few more questions for you, but I don't think that we don't have more time than maybe like for another round, because I want to open it up to questions from the students. So maybe I'm going to combine the next two questions. One is let's bring it back to UConn. What experience at UConn you believe was the most helpful in helping prepare you for your future career? And what is the one thing you knew? You know, I know that that's a cliche question, but it's important. Like, what was that one experience? And second part of the question is like, what is that one thing you wish you knew when you were back here? Like, what would you tell your previous self? Juliana, let's start with you.
Yeah, honestly, these panels, like I remember being a UConn student, and that's why I'm honestly so honored to be here, because when I was sitting on the other side, every single panel, I was taking notes. I was writing down whoever was speaking, like speaking for myself, like I'm an immigrant Latina and I'm first generation college student, first generation everything. And I can't rely on my parents who know people that know people that know people. Like anybody who I met, like that was now my network. So one of the most valuable things I think UConn provided me was a network. Like Natalie said, you use your professors. Like till this day, I still email Matthew Warwood and I tell him what is up with my life, how I'm doing, what's going on. You know, like he sent me his book that he wrote about creativity for children because I told him I had a baby. You know, like have a relationship with your professors. I cannot stress that enough, because this is your network and there are people. Creativity is a space that is really evolving, and content creation, like what Annie said, is that job role. People outside of college are doing it. Like that's the reality, is that people are not going to college for this. So what's going to separate you from them, from the YouTube University people, is the network that you built in this space. Because the reality is, yeah, you can go onto YouTube and say, how do I do so and so in After Effects or in Photoshop? But what you guys are doing, those mock projects. I mean, I still remember my mock project. I was the project manager for a kelp company. And all of those things, like they really teach you so much and they make a difference. So like, I would just not take any of those mock opportunities for granted. I would have to take, I mean, I did take them serious, but like, I would just reiterate that to myself of like all of those projects, of not taking them for granted. Also keep your portfolio stuff. I have nothing that I made. We did so much and I have nothing. I don't remember what happened to that. So keep everything that you make for your portfolio, or just like even to see your growth, I think is pretty cool to be able to see like how you started. And yeah, so get a hard drive, save all of that stuff. And then listen, if you guys are interested in anything that I'm doing, like stay connected with me. I mean, recently I got to, somebody that was on a panel when I was a student reached out to me. Now she was a teacher and she wanted me to speak to one of her students. And so like that was a full circle moment. So stay connected to any of us. You know, if there's a field that you're interested in that one of us are doing, reach out to us on LinkedIn. I've spoken to several UConn students that have reached out to me through LinkedIn. I'm always down to help and serve you guys however I can. That's all.
Juliana, thank you so much. Annie, let's go with you.
Yeah, to second that, I mean, definitely add us on LinkedIn. I will endorse you for everything. I'm just gonna assume you're great at all of it. I'll endorse you for all of it. Hold on one sec. My husband's loudly opening nuts in the background.
We can read lips.
He's gonna type it. He's got headphones on. He can't hear me yelling at him. Anyway, I also one really big thing I learned from my agency class. Loved the agency class. One of my like primary mortifications that I wake up remembering at 3 a.m. is I was a project manager my senior year. Not to brag, but I also had a crush on one of the people in my group. So it was like I was like kind of just like unhinged and chaotic. And I'm not this kind of person, but I got like mad at my group and I got up and stormed off. And my professor was like, you cannot do that. I know you needed to take a beat, but you cannot storm off. And it was a really great lesson in being like, oh my gosh, my ego, it does not revolve around any work I do. My ego is who I am and how I treat people. My ego is not my work, no matter what the work is. So that was a really, really good crash course in being like, oh, I gotta like really check myself here and not get emotionally invested and let myself get hurt if my ideas are shut down. Because guess what? In the agency, your ideas will be shut down 75% of the time. But that makes like the rest of it so great. When your ideas rarely get picked up, you're like, oh, chef's kiss, beautiful. Also, I mean, totally like network, like these people in a few years, you're all going to be working different places. You will probably experience layoffs. I think we've all experienced layoffs. I've experienced layoffs. My company just had layoffs this morning. Did not affect me, thankfully, but like you are going to need each other and you're going to need this community of other digital media professionals in your career. Maybe in 5 years, 10 years. I don't know if digital media advertising will still be a thing in 20, but maybe 20. I had one other thing to say, but I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, like add me on LinkedIn, add all of us on LinkedIn. Don't get emotionally invested and attached to the point where like your ego is wrapped up in it. That's one other thing. Oh yeah, save your work. Absolutely, 100% save your work. My portfolio was just work from UConn for like 6 months, and I got some interviews for places I didn't want to work. But yeah, save your work. Add us on LinkedIn. These are your friends.
Thank you, Annie. Natalie, what about you?
So for me, I like again the assignments, like Juliana said, take them seriously. I think for some assignments, even myself, I didn't think to like say like, oh, what's my favorite brand? Let me base this project off my favorite brand and like, you know, pitch ideas. Because again, you could use that work towards your portfolio. And that's something that really helped me at like during my time at UConn. Also, like I didn't know everything, and asking for help, asking a classmate for help is really, really important too. Like don't ever shy away from doing that. I feel like some people are like, oh, I shouldn't ask for help, but no, you should always ask for help. I think that's the only way you can learn. I was always asking for help. I was always asking somebody like, hey, like how do you like move this clip here? How do you cut this clip on After Effects? And that's how I learned like everything I know. And on the job, I learned as I went, and you know, I always had someone like mentor me along the way. So yeah, I mean, challenges, there are challenges in the workforce, but as long as like you work in a good team and you're a team player, I think everything's gonna be okay. So yeah, UConn like really helped me, and I again like you just don't be afraid to ask for help, and be very like open to criticism, and that like Annie said, ego is a big thing, and people take note of that. And um I like many times I had to pitch projects, and I would feel nervous, and you kind of actually prepared me for that. Like many times I had to present in class, and a lot of the times like at work I have to pitch ideas, or like, you know, it's okay, you could go ahead. Many times I had to, you know, pitch ideas, and most of the times they're not going to be accepted, and that's fine too. Um, but like, yeah, that's pretty much like most of the challenges that I faced. And you're always just going to be learning on the job, and it's a journey. Like everyone said, it's a journey. You just got to ride it. Ride it and trust in yourself. And also don't be afraid to ask for help.
Thank you, Natalie. I think that I'm gonna open up for questions now. We have people on that are with us virtually, so feel free to write a question in here, and also the people here. And I think that we have a first hand back here, so begin.
How y'all doing? I have a few questions, but I'm gonna just ask one to start.
Yeah, let's have one, and try to get a little closer so they can hear you better.
Oh, can y'all hear me? Alright, one question I do have, like, for sure, is, about managing tight deadlines. I have a hard time with dealing with, you know, deadlines and managing my time effectively to be able to get my projects done. So I was wondering, how do you all approach managing tight deadlines while ensuring creative quality doesn't, you know, suffer from that?
I don't mind kicking it off. Practice it now, one, because this is like, you know, you miss an assignment, it's not as crazy as, you know, at a work environment. Not that you should miss an assignment, but practice it now. The reality of time, right? If you look at a 24-hour span, if you get 8 hours of sleep, there's still 16 hours of the day. And it's being able to, one, manage how much leisure you're taking. And I mean by scrolling, watching, other things, right? Being able to take that into accountability. Also, it's like, I understand as a creative, sometimes we need to meditate on things for a little bit, like let it resonate, but do that productively. Like, don't just think it's going to come to you. Take a walk, like go to a museum, like do something that you know it's going to initiate some sort of like thinking of it. When I took a design thinking class, and again, like I'm telling you, years later, this is still in my mind. What we did was that we started off with one post-it note on the wall, and we wrote something down, and then we started to build on that. So making sure that the time that you're using to actually like cultivate a thought is being productive and intentional, and not just like, okay, it's gonna come to me. So like even that strategy of like taking one thought and letting it build and grow, and like then you come out with like 10 ideas or so. But also I've been using lately this app called Structured. I was a physical planner person, but I've been having a really hard time with that. But there's an app called Structured, and you can just lay out your full day, and you just start like, okay, from this time to this time. And I'm talking about the littlest things, like from this time to this time, I'm going to check my email. From this time to this time, I'm going to like, I have this on there. And it just feels so good to be able to check things off that like, it's like, okay, now I'm going to structure my day. But either some sort of planner or some sort of digital app that allows you to really like plan out your day. Because if you don't plan, you're gonna fail. There's just, you have to be able to know what's next.
To jump off of that, great points. Just two quick things. Don't be afraid to work smarter, not harder. I was really reluctant to use CapCut instead of the Adobe suite because I'm like, I'm a purist. I do my own effects, but really like simplify the work as much as possible. Make yourself templates, and also don't be so precious about the work. Like sometimes it's like just get it done. You don't have to like ruminate on it forever. Just get it done. Use shortcuts. Just like use as little time as you can, honestly.
So my take on deadlines, at my job, it's a little different. So we have these things, like in our team, we have a project manager, then we have a design team, and then we have a copy team, and what else do we have? Sorry. And basically the project manager kind of like assigns you a project, and then they're supposed to give you a deadline, and then you kind of manage around that. Sometimes, depending on your bandwidth, you could say like, oh, I could handle these 3 projects at the same time. But most of the times what happens is something urgent will come in and you kind of just have to be like, all right, I'll take it. And usually what I do is I'll talk to the project manager. I'll tell them, hey, like, I know I have to get this due on Friday, but like, this is urgent. So can we kind of get a little extra time on the project that's due on Friday and kind of get a compromise there? And usually, like, just having communication with your project manager is like key, really. And just kind of like always communicating what your bandwidth is and being realistic about it. Because you never want to say like, oh yeah, I could get it done. And then, they're waiting for you and they're like, where is the work? So that's my my advice on that. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Natalie. I'm going to read a question from the chat and then we can go back with questions in here. This is from Christina. Christina is saying, what is your advice on getting your foot in the door in terms of internships?
Yeah, I'm gonna just continue to stress doing free work and building your portfolio. I mean, reach out to anybody you know that like is starting up a small business, and just being able to build something that you're proud of so that when you're applying to internships, you're able to show what your skill sets are and what you can contribute. I would also say do like research on the company, maybe use them as like a mock, like what would you do? But and then reaching out to your professors, anybody in that network, using like the career development center, getting your resume like edited, like they offer that. Like use that. People pay, after college I realized people pay like $200 to get their resumes redone, and you guys have access to that for free. So use all of the resources you get.
Thank you.
Um,
Anyone else wants to add something, Natalie or Annie, or should we go to the next question?
To what Juliana said, yes, resume is really important. And what I did is I always updated my resume and I always updated my portfolio. Like every job that I was in, I like would update. And then sometimes I take away work that isn't relevant to what I'm like applying for. And then the other thing I would do is I would this is really important. Always like, it's easy to fix your portfolio, but it's hard to get a recruiter. If you get a recruiter, they will help you find jobs. That helped me a lot. I got a recruiter and they helped me like find jobs related to the work that I had, and that should help. Just the portfolio is the important one. Recruiting and interviews is second.
Thank you all. Let's see if there's anyone other question. If we do a follow-up or something good. Guys, any other question? I think Big Ed has a follow-up, but I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to ask. Go ahead. And then
I just want to say thank you guys for all the advice. I think it was very useful and insightful. But my question is, how do you avoid burnout and how do you ensure that your creative juices are coming and everything's working as it should, I guess?
I'll start with this one. That is such a great question. Also, thank you for being so cordial and gracious. We're thrilled to be here. Okay, so just make sure you have a life outside of work. If you are passionate about anything else, do it. I also, I paint, I sing, I do music, I listen to a ton of podcasts. I spend like long days just like sitting on the couch watching 30 Rock for the 5th time. Like just make sure you have an identity outside of your work, and that will really help you survive the 9 to 5.
Yeah, I want to echo what Annie said. Burnout is going to happen, and it's part of adulting. It's part of this career. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong with you or whatever. It's a checkpoint. It's letting yourself know that something needs to be, reset. And that might mean going back to the things that you're passionate about, being able to have something that you know, helps me personally is making sure that my body is moving. I mean, creativity strikes at any moment. And I think that that's one of the greatest things about being a creative is that you can go outside for a walk and then you start looking at the trees a little different. You start looking at the sky a little different. You go out with your friends and then you just notice like the world completely changes. So make sure that you're going outside and you're staying up to date with what is relevant. I mean, that means going into stores and looking at, I mean, ever since I started working on like billboards and overheads, I'm looking at every single billboard, like, okay, what did Calvin Klein do? Like, that's pretty interesting. Okay, what did Uber do? That looks pretty interesting. Like, you just start looking at the world in a different way. And then it becomes fun of like, hey, what would be my take and my perception on this? And also creativity comes in a different ways. I think it's so cool. Annie paints. I like to do photography, and that's just like my thing completely outside of work. I also tell people that like, yeah, I was talking about doing free work, but then like use your giftings to help other people. And I think that that becomes so self-satisfying. Like I will do photography for people that I care about. And that's just a way that I get to exercise my creative juices. And I feel like I'm contributing to the world somehow. So like, just find a way to use your gift that contributes to the world in which you're not gaining anything. And I think that that's a great way to just make an impact and keep yourself grounded.
You guys took the words out of my mouth, but yeah, to what they said, I like to paint watercolor, so I paint a lot too. I also just, I'm like every week I go to the movie theaters, or I'll just do PTO and I'll take a trip somewhere. I went to Italy this past like April, so that was really fun. And the creativity is never going to end. Creativity is taking inspiration from others, and you know, you don't have to worry about burnout. Just always listen to your body and take a break when you need it. And just like, you know, go for a walk. I always go on walks when I'm at work. I find that very like therapeutic and super like important, just to like have a few like minutes off the computer. And you always just need a fresh set of eyes on work. And sometimes like I'm working on a assignment for like the whole day and I just need the next day in the morning to finish it, which is totally fine. But yeah, like I said, you know, listen to yourself and make sure you take those breaks, and you know, be very mindful of how you're feeling, how you're doing your work, and it'll be okay.
Really fast, just to jump off what Natalie said. Take your PTO, take your time off. You better take time off and just sit on the couch. That's what I'm doing today. Take time off. Take it.
Thank you. I think that Yuna has a question, and then we have maybe one follow-up here to make sure that we're good in time. So Yuna, you can unmute yourself and please go ahead.
Hello, this is Yuna. I'm really excited to learn from your experience today. I have a couple of questions, but so first of all, could you walk us through what like a typical day looks like in your current role, and what are like some key responsibilities you manage on a daily basis? And what would you say are the most important expectations or skills that companies in the design industry have for designers today? I can also put the questions in the chat. Thank you.
So my day-to-day, I work very similar as Natalie, where I have a project manager that gives me a set of assets that have been briefed by the marketing team. And so the marketing team will say, hey, you know, like we're already working on holiday. We have our holiday campaign that we're currently working on. So the holiday campaign has been shot. We have X amount of social posts that need to go out, or PR assets or whatever. And most of my day will either be executing those projects, so like making sure those things are done, but then they go through a series of rounds of reviews. We also have a copy team, so I have to work with the copy team to make sure that the copy that they have is relevant to whatever we're showing as the designers. And then once, you know, my creative director has okayed the work or whatever, we show it to our CMO, and we kind of see like what the whole experience is going to look like. So what would the customer see on social that's going to be relevant to what they see on email, which what they'll see on the website, maybe on a commercial, and making sure that that story is like tying in together. So on a day-to-day, I'm kind of like somewhere in that funnel of either executing or in a series of reviews and editing. I think that one of the biggest traits, I guess it's kind of what you asked for, is like what would be important is being able to be flexible with the programs that you work on. So like when I started, we were exclusively on Adobe, but I don't know if you guys have heard or have started to work on Figma, but like Figma is now becoming the brand standard on a lot of agencies, and a lot of creative fields they're now transitioning to Figma. So like being like, you never stop learning, and it's being okay with like making that transition. Like we had to move everything over from Adobe into Figma. So yeah.
Thank you so much for the question. And I think that's a great question. My workday is similar to Juliana. I'm just like waiting to know what the next move is from the project manager and making the assets, like meeting an amount of deliverables for the month. Your question of like what things to be most up to date on is a really great question, Juliana. Figma, totally. CapCut is a good one. Like know how to take like basic food photography. It is shocking how many people I know end up just taking pictures of food for their job. And honestly, just like learn as many skills as you can. Like if you don't know much about motion design, definitely look into it. Because right now, like people are looking for a jack of all trades. The more you can bring to the table right now, the more valuable an asset you might be to a team. So definitely look into Figma, CapCut, and anything else that interests you too. If you're like, I want to make a Snapchat filter, look into how to do that.
I work very closely, closely related to what Juliana explained. Again, like Figma is a really great tool, especially like where I work, because it makes it a lot easier to share your work. And in terms of like, so I work with both Photoshop and Figma, and basically like Figma is like what I use to kind of show the layout, share the work to like the copy team so they could implement copy changes. And it's also a really great tool to kind of like export stuff into like PDFs. And for the most part, like again, very closely to what Juliana said, I do similarly the same work. Sometimes we're a group of 3 designers. Sometimes I'm asked to do like, build a storyboard, and I'll work closely with the producer, and we'll like come up with inspiration and like see what other brands are doing, and like base a storyboard off of that. And then after that goes to the brand. We pitch it to the brand, then they give us their input, and then from there it's like execution. But pretty much like that's the only slight difference, is like not only do I produce assets, I also do sometimes I do work like that. But most of the times you won't be asked to do like more than what you're hired for. But again, to what Annie said, a lot of the times they want you to know like more than just what you know, and they are looking for a jack of all trades, which UConn definitely prepared me for that. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I think that we might have time for one more question. We have Ed's follow-up, unless someone has. Yeah, do you mind, Ed, so we can like have other people ask? Kadir, go ahead.
I remember well, you guys mentioned before that it's like you're not really like you only like show up to do the work when you're really passionate about something. What if you like enter into the field and you slowly begin to realize that you're not like super passionate about it? How would you go about like, I guess, like looking for what you're truly passionate about, or you know what I mean?
So the question is, what would you do if you entered a field and you realize you're not passionate about it? Like, what would you do? Just clarifying.
Yeah, or, well, what would you like, how do you go about looking for like something that you are passionate about?
Yeah. I think that any opportunity that you're in, you should take away what you can from it. And that doesn't mean that you failed. If you find yourself in a situation in which you're not passionate about what you do, all you did was you learned what you don't want to do. And that's equally as important as learning what you do want to do. So being able to gain experience, being able to master whatever you're doing, right? Like it's okay to step away and start looking for another job. But before, like you, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, well, I guess not Gen Alpha isn't in the work field, but Gen Z is known as the generation that just like leaves job after job after job. And I wouldn't say that that's necessarily healthy either, to just like give up when you're not passionate about something. I think that you should use any opportunity that you're in to learn and grow within yourself and as a creative. But then start looking at just like other things in life that excite you and how can you apply that creativity for it. So for me, it was fitness, and I ended up getting my personal training certification, and I started to just produce content and making things and challenges and building up stuff that relied on creativity, but also on another skill set. I know that Annie mentioned, she's going to school for social work. Like I can assume that for her, helping people is something that's important. And so it's just like being able to understand that like your creativity is a gift that can be applied to so many aspects. So it's like having that conversation of like what in you, what it gets excited. Is it sports? Is it helping people? Is it maybe you want to be like a teacher, but you could still be a creative teacher. It's like being able to just apply this skill set of creativity into anything. And I think that that's the coolest thing that we get to do, is like this is necessary anywhere. Any profession that you decide to go with requires creativity, even if it doesn't look like what you always thought it was going to look like. And just also being able to like align your values and who you are with your workspace. When I was going through that series of like getting interviews for jobs, I got offered a job. This is just me personally, just being vulnerable. I got offered a job for an alcohol company. Personally, I don't drink. That's not something that gets me excited. I declined the job because I knew that I wouldn't feel good making content for something that I don't identify with. So when something came up with like Bleacher Report or Gap, I love fashion and I love sports. That was something I could see myself getting excited. So it's just being able to have that honest conversation with like who you are and how can you apply that in the workspace.
Yeah, that's definitely a really great point. I do feel like, I don't know if it's like giving up, but like if something doesn't serve you and you have the resources to leave and you have like a bit of a safety net or like a partner, you can move home, like get out of there. I know too many people in this field who have been like, I'm going crazy, and then they wait till the last second and like fully burnt out, and then it takes them a while to recover, because it's true. Like you will know if you are in a bad situation. Like your body will tell you if you are uncomfortable, and you'll just know. And even if you just like have to be in tune with yourself as much as possible. And if you are looking for your passion, like I did not have the luxury of like I had, like when I was laid off from Dentsu, I worked on Mondelez. That was the worst. And like Juliana, when you go back to values, like it would be so amazing to like always be able to align with our values. But unfortunately, like, for example, there was an Earth Day post and I was like, or there was an Earth Day concept. Client wanted to do something for Earth Day. And I was like, let's do Earth Day stuff. And the project manager was like, no, Mondelez is very bad for the Earth. We don't want to do anything that ties us to the planet. I was like, well, that's terrible. And that was like a real big ick at that job. In addition to it just being like, honestly, a terrible work environment. It was the worst. I was thrilled to be laid off. I'm rambling, but I was laid off. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I found great. And That's where I am right now doing Applebee's. Grey Group was the only place that I had a job offer because like you just gotta work, and you know this, like everyone knows this. Like it is so expensive to be a person. You take the jobs that you're given, and I've had the real privilege to like volunteer on the weekends and talk to friends about this and like read, and I've had enough spare time to be like, I want to be a social worker. I want to eventually be a therapist. But in hindsight, like I always wanted to be in a helping profession, and I went into digital media because I thought I wanted to do it because I was a really good like designer, and I was more like bad at all the other things. Like I was not like a math science girly or an English girly. I was like, I can draw. So I just kind of chose an easy route. The UConn DMD program, phenomenal. Like I really, really, really loved it. It was the best version of this for me. And I think it really, really prepared me for a field that I quickly outgrew. Just because it didn't serve me. And I knew it wasn't serving me because I was like getting like the Sunday scaries every single day. So really just like if you are drawn to something, pursue it in whatever capacity you can. And just trust yourself. If something feels yucky, like it's probably yucky.
So in my experience, I actually worked at a job where I was learning up to a certain point, and when you reach a point where you're bored, literally doing the same thing, and your skills are being underutilized, I think that's the right time to just be like, I think I'm ready for a challenge. And that's what happened to me before I started working at Conair. So before I started working at Conair, I was actually a photo retoucher, and again, like my focus of study, I was actually business strategies. So imagine going from that to like photo retoucher to like digital designer. All my work was reflective of digital design. And at the job I was at before I landed Conair, I just knew immediately that like if my skills weren't being utilized and I wasn't being like considered of value, I knew I had to leave. So I did everything I could to update my portfolio, and that's what really got me where I was. And I think you'll know when you're like in a situation where you need to leave, and that's like when I knew I needed to leave when I felt bored and I wasn't learning anything new and I wasn't being challenged. And sometimes like I would ask like, hey, like I know like I know business strategies, I know ways in which we could push our product forward, and that wouldn't really like I wasn't really considered in a role like that, so I knew I wanted something more, and I went out and looked for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the one thing that I would add, and I think that with this, I'm going to close it. I think that it's a really good way to finish our conversation. And Juliana, you started talking a little bit about this. It's also knowing the balance between when you need to know that you need to quit or you need to persist, right? And sometimes we, at every level, right, at every single stage, I think that it's important that we have that balance because we don't want to start getting to that unhealthy habit of saying like, oh, I don't want this, it's too much for me, I'm out. The one piece of advice that I would say for you and like everyone else in here is like, it's okay to leave, but making sure that you have what's next lined up. Unless it's something urgent, like you're a danger, it's like going against your values. But like knowing that balance, I think that comes with age. And I'm sure that that's something that the two of you start experiencing the minute you are student and you start transitioning to this seasoned professional, right? So I was very glad, Juliana, that you also brought that up, because I think that's important. And it's 3:03, so Juliana, Annie, and Natalie, thank you so much for your time. Let's have a round for them. It was an amazing opportunity that we had to get to know what you're up to, what you're doing, and I'm sure that some people here will be in touch with you most likely. So thank you again so much, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.